Okay, we are live, but this is quite not, this isn't quite how I wanted things to work because I'm supposed to be using OBS. This is great. And I'm wearing these stupid glasses, which I'm absolutely going to take off right now. Okay. Well, if there's anyone out there, bear with me, because I'm just going to try and see if I can switch over to OBS. Select broadcast and start streaming. All right, let's see. Ah, okay. Has this got it? Maybe? Maybe? Yeah. Hello. And can we switch? All right, so now if I quit out from this tab. All right, so now if I quit out from this tab, is OBS going to keep working? I think so. All right. Cool. Everyone can hear me, I think. Fingers crossed, anyway. All right. Hello, folks. So what we're going to do today, I'm just going to turn this music down a teeny bit. There we go. Oh yeah, super relaxing. So, without further ado, hello to the couple of you who are here. Thanks for coming out. What we're going to start by doing, I'm just going to double check, is that actually showing up on my end? Yes, you can hear me. Cool. And that's working. I'm just going to use the incredibly low fight technique of like looking at my own phone. Alright. Making a live stream. Oh yeah, that looks like it's working now. Perfect. Okay. Alright. Moving along. So, what I thought we would do today is, I'm going to start by reading a little bit from the Metamorphosis, and then we are going to, if there's any questions that people want to ask, just pop them down in the chat, and I will... Oh, one side of headphones. Oh, yeah, that's not ideal. That is an issue that may be beyond my capabilities to fix right now. Actually, hang on. Let me look at the mic aux properties. Oh yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah, I can see the issue. Because my mic should just be recording in mono. Let's try that. How's it sounding now? This should be coming in on both sides now. Okay. Thanks everyone for for helping out here and just letting me know the issues that are going on. Yeah, so I'm gonna read some from the Metamorphosis, and we're gonna have a little bit of a chat about the process that I go through in putting together one of these episodes. And I'm also going to show you a little bit about my recording process as well, if it's... Yay, that's great to hear. Thank you, Monsieur Bread. Great to hear that. I go through a little bit of the process. So you can see here, I've got my digital audio workstation. I use Reaper. It's kind of like a good... mid-range. Okay, now why is that not showing up? Sweet. Oh, you can't even see me now. I guess it doesn't really matter. Just double check this. Properties. Huh. Logitech webcam. Honestly, it doesn't matter. As long as you can hear me, that's the main thing. Alright. So, yes. I am going to record a little bit of the Metamorphosis. We're then going to have a little bit of a chat about some of the... Actually, it would be way better if you could see me. Hey, what's going on here? Let me just try again and add... Just doing this on the fly. Remove video capture device. Add video capture device. audio. Here we go. Ah, that's better. Yay! Alright, I'm back. Just figuring out how OBS works. Cool. Okay, because I have got my always useful Collins German Dictionary and Grammar. Hello! Hello, hello. And I've got my coffee. I've got my digital audio workstation Reaper ready to go. So, let's have a bit of a read from Der Verwandlung, shall we? So it was really interesting, actually, to... Excellent! Reading books. Love to hear that. Definitely, definitely, it might come up. There's so many books, so little time, and so much Limbus Company to play as well. In reading through the Metamorphosis again, for the purposes of this upcoming episode, what I like to do is with note-taking, I'm a little bit far away from the camera here, but I have this, again, real lo-fi, real low-key, low-tech process, but it's like a 4-color pen, and I kind of like to use 1 color each for either just notes of stuff that's in the text. That's usually, so for example on this, you can see maybe in this piece of paper here, I've kind of like got like the 4 colors here. So one is notes from the text, which are in black. Literally, I was trying to, especially trying to think about comparing Gregor from the book versus Gregor from Limbus Company, and there are quite a lot of differences. Because I know a couple of you, at least, have read the book and have pointed those out or made some of these facts known in the comments on some of my previous videos. And also then the read for just my own kind of thoughts and responses to the texts, because I think that's also really interesting to do regardless of whether you're watching a movie, playing a game, reading a book, whatever. And then green for body horror stuff, because it kind of builds up over the course of the book as either his transformation continues as he loses the power, his power of speech, or various unpleasant things happen to his body. And then blue for kind of just everything extra. So, for example, I was just noting down as I was reading in the intro to the particular version of the Metamorphosis that I had, is that there's a whole reason why, while the insect in question is depicted as a cockroach, the author, Kafka, he actually specifically specified that the insect in question never be depicted. But the general consensus is it's sort of a cockroach, maybe some kind of large beetle or what have you. Hence why, of course, again, Gregor in the game has the cockroach arm, and it's kind of the closest thing that there is. But I'll talk a bit about the specific issues with language once we have a bit of a read of our first section. So without further ado, just got to make sure that I'm recording here. Okay. Nice. Cool. Right, because I will actually be using some of this recorded material in the upcoming episode. So, sit back, relax, if you've got a snack, got a drink, and we will begin from the very beginning of the Metamorphosis. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a giant insect. He was lying on his hard, as it were, armor-plated back, and when he lifted his head a little, he could see his dome-like brown belly divided into stiff, arched segments, on top of which the bed quilt could hardly keep in position and was about to slide off completely. His numerous legs, which were pitifully thin compared to the rest of his bulk, waved helplessly before his eyes. "What has happened to me?" he thought. It was no dream. His room, a regular human bedroom, only rather too small, lay quiet between the 4 familiar walls. Above the table on which a collection of cloth samples was unpacked and spread out, Samsa was a commercial traveller, hung the picture which he had recently cut out of an... So, made a bit of a mistake there, so I make a little click, because that'll show up in the waveform of the audio, and I can go back and easily correct it. hung the picture which he had recently cut out of an illustrated magazine and put into a pretty gilt frame. It showed a lady with a fur cap on and a fur stole, sitting upright and holding out to the spectator a huge fur muff into which the whole of her forearm had vanished. Gregor's eyes turned next to the window and the overcast sky. One could hear raindrops beating on the window gutter, made him quite melancholy. What about sleeping a little longer and forgetting all this nonsense, he thought. But it could not be done, for he was accustomed to sleep on his right side, and in his present condition he could not turn himself over. However violently he forced himself toward his right side, he always rolled onto his back again. He tried it at least 100 times, shutting his eyes to keep from seeing his struggling legs, and only desisted when he began to feel in his side a faint, dull ache he had never experienced before. Oh God, he thought, what an exhausting job I've picked on. Travelling about day in, day out. It's much more irritating work than doing the actual business in the office. And on top of that, there's the trouble of constant travelling, of worrying about train connections, the bed and irregular meals, casual acquaintances that are always new and never become intimate friends. The devil take it all. He felt a slight itching up on his belly, slowly pushing himself on his back nearer to the top of the bed so that he could lift his head more easily, identified the itching place, which was surrounded by many small white spots, the nature of which he could not understand, and made to touch it with a leg, but drew the leg back immediately, for the contact made a cold shiver run through him. He slid down again into his former position. This getting up early, he thought, makes one quite stupid. The man needs his sleep. Other commercials live like harem women. For instance, when I come back to the hotel of a morning to write up the orders I've got, these others are only sitting down to the breakfast. Let me just try that with my chief. My boss. I'd be sacked on the spot. Anyhow, that might be quite a good thing for me. Who can tell? If I didn't have to hold my hand because of my parents, I'd have given notice long ago. I'd have gone to the chief, I'd have gone to the manager Bud and told him exactly what I think of him. That would knock him endways from his desk. It's a queer way of doing, too. This sitting on high at a desk and talking down to employees, especially when they have to come quite near because the chief is hard of hearing. Well, there's still hope. Once I've saved enough money to pay back my parents' debts to him, that should take another 5 or 6 years, I'll do it without fail. I'll cut myself off completely loose then. For the moment, though, I'd better get up, since my train goes at 5. He looked at the alarm clock ticking on the chest. Heavenly Father, he thought. It was 6:30, and the hands were quietly moving on. It was even past the half hour. It was getting on toward 6:45. Had the alarm clock not gone off? From the bed, one could see that it had been properly set for 4 o'clock. Of course it must have gone off. Yes, but was it possible to sleep quietly through that ear-splitting noise? Well, he had not slept quietly, yet apparently all the more soundly for that. But what was he to do now? The next train went at 7 o'clock. To catch that, he would need to hurry like mad, and his samples weren't even picked up, and he himself wasn't feeling particularly fresh and active. And even if he did catch the train, he wouldn't avoid a row with the chief, since the firm's porter would have been waiting for the 5 o'clock train and would have long since reported his failure to turn up. The porter was a creature of the chief's, spineless and stupid. Well, supposing he were to say he was sick. But that would be most unpleasant, and would look suspicious, since during his 5 years' employment he had not been ill once. The chief himself would be sure to come with the sick insurance doctor, would reproach his parents with their son's laziness, and would cut all excuses short by referring to the insurance doctor who, of course, regarded all mankind as perfectly healthy malingerers. was. And would he be so far wrong on this occasion? Gregor really felt well, apart from a drowsiness that was utterly superfluous after such a long sleep. And he was even unusually hungry. As all this was running through his mind at top speed without his being able to decide to leave his bed, the alarm clock had just struck 7:15. There came a cautious tap at the door behind the head of his bed. "Gregor," said a voice. It was his mother's. "It's 7:15. Hadn't you a train to catch?" That gentle voice. Gregor had a shock as he heard his own voice answering hers. Unmistakably his own voice. It was true, but with a persistent, horrible, twittering squeak behind it, like an undertone, which left the words in their clear shape only for the first moment, and then rose up, reverberating around them to destroy their sense, so that one could not be sure one had heard them rightly. Gregor wanted to answer at length and explain everything, but in the circumstance, he confined himself to saying, Yes, thank you, Mother. I'm getting up now." The wooden door between them must have kept the change in his voice from being noticeable outside, for his mother contented herself with the statement and shuffled away. Right, so. Well, a little low. Yeah, okay, we can do something about that. We've lost the window capture again, haven't we? No, we've lost cool. Alright. So, now what we want to do is we want to take a look at... So, it's a relatively straightforward process. In fact, what I normally do, and this is kind of the same for audiobooks, everything really. There are ways to streamline this, but we can take a listen. Nice. Cool. Right, because I will actually be using... Sit back, relax, if you've got... As Gregor Samsa awoke one... Cool, easy. And then, essentially, it's a matter of looking for... hung the picture, which he had recently cut out of an... So, made a bit of a click, because that'll show up in the... Hung the picture, which he had... Commercial traveller. Hung the picture... And like it never happened. Samsa was a commercial traveller, hung the picture which he had recently cut. The next one, wherever that might be. He slid down. I'll cut myself off. Cool. And so it's just an S to split the I'll do it without fail. I'll cut myself completely loose. Yeah. All the more sound. But what was he to do now? And so on and so forth. What was he to do now? The next train went... Yeah, so that's kind of like the basics. Yeah, Ned, I mean, that would be a real... Yeah, sorry, I've noticed that. I'm not quite sure why that is. I've got that whacked up to full on... let me just have another look. Audio properties. I wonder what's not capturing it. Because it might be an issue with OBS. Again, thank you everyone for bearing with this. I wonder if there's any other way. Yeah, because I'm just using the audio mixer here for OBS. Settings, balance, audio monitoring, tracks. Can I? Don't know what that's going to do. Oh, I can go past 100%. I don't know if this is getting any louder. And let me try monitoring myself. Monitor and monitor only. Okay. All right, it's coming in. Except now I might be like doubling it. Yeah, it is a very oddly tame reaction. That's something that actually is characteristic of Kafka's works in general. They often, in fact, there's a general theme. A sort of reasonably successful professional man, almost always, suddenly having this completely nonsensical and quite nightmarish change sort of come into his life. And yeah, he's much more alarmed about the fact that he's potentially going to be late for work than he is about being a giant beetle or a cockroach. It lends it a really dreamlike character, obviously, and there are other facets of the stories which also make things dreamlike. And literally, in fact, people debate whether or not Kafka either just didn't care about some of these details or whether it's a deliberate choice. For example, shortly after, so the little excerpt that I read, shortly after that, their maid, so they're extremely, in debt, and yet they can afford to keep a maid, go figure, their maid, is horrified seeing the insect and gives her notice on the spot and leaves. And yet a couple of pages later, she's back like nothing ever happened, and it's referred to as the cook having left. And yeah, people are divided whether this was a deliberate choice to again give the whole book that sort of dreamlike sense, or it was just a detail that Kafka didn't particularly care about. Maybe we'll never know. I don't know. I'm not sure where I sit on that scale. It's always nice to think that every choice, I certainly feel a bit like this with Limbus Company, you want to think every choice is deliberate, right? Everything, every incongruity is a little breadcrumb that's there for you to follow. But sometimes people just make mistakes, is the truth of it, really. Now, so I wanted to talk a little bit about this famous first line, right? So and again, the problems of translation. And this is where it also gets interesting, because again, thinking about a game like Limbus Company, where, you're operating from something that is, is all in Korean, is written in Hangul, and then that is based on works that are written in, Spanish, English, ancient Greek, translated again and again, and yet, honestly, I'm just astounded that things end up as sort of intelligible and coherent as they are. It's a true wonder to me. But this first sentence, right, as Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a giant insect. Even the way it's written is quite flat. You know what I mean? As this happened, he found himself transformed. There's no sudden reveal. It's just there from the get-go. This is the story you're about to hear. And so it has a particular psychological effect. And apparently even in the German, so because Kafka, so he wrote the Metamorphosis around 1912, 1911. It was published in 1915. So he lived in Prague. He was Jewish, but he spoke German. His Czech, I believe, because Prague's obviously now in the Czech Republic. His Czech was never particularly good, so he lived in a sort of enclave of German speakers. But strangely enough, because again, they were also relatively isolated, his German, he didn't have a chance to, say, pick up slang that sort of, if he lived in a larger German-speaking community. So it's been said that it was a quite sort of almost academic way of writing, which again possibly lends itself to this very just flat kind of reportage. So in German it is, als Gregor Samsa eines Morgens aus... Let me start that again. Als Gregor Samsa eines Morgens aus unruhigen Träumen erwachte, fand sich in seinem Bett zu einem ungeheuren Ungeziefer verwandelt. So, if you translate that literally, word for word, you get a kind of old-fashioned sounding English. So, as Gregor Samsa one morning from unquiet dreams awoke, so it's still understandable, does sound a bit Yoda-ish, so that unquiet dreams, unruhigen Träumen erwachte, awoke, fand sich in seinem Bett. He found himself in his bed to some... Now, here's an interesting thing. The word Ungeziefer, that's... Yes. In Old German, translates as an unclean animal unfit for sacrifice. But if we take a look at... We take a look in the old dictionary here. T-U. E-U-N-G. So ungeheuer, obviously an adjective, can mean huge, enormous, but it can also mean monstrous. So this is where we get the idea of a monstrous insect. Ungeziefer, yeah, this is the idea of the unclean animal fit for sacrifice. And then, of course, verwandelt is to be transformed. And then the title of the book in German, of course, is Der Verwandlung. Yes, okay. So just a little bit of kind of background info there. And at some point, if anyone has any questions, if you're kind of curious about, apart from what I'm already showing you, hello, Andrew.mp4311. Excellent. I suspect this is where quite a few people have come from, but I'm hoping maybe there'll be like a kind of general bit of interest. Otherwise, I'm just flailing around desperately, and hey, sometimes that's fun to watch too. Anyway. Where was I? Oh yeah. Okay, so we've done that. Yeah, if you do have any random questions like how did I get started in doing this sort of thing? Anyway, anything at all. Some I might not be able to answer. The meaning of life, the universe, and everything, for example. Definitely not. But yeah, anything of that nature, do drop it in the chat. Because mostly it's all been just people very kindly letting me know of the technical issues I've been having. Okay. Oh, yeah, Andrew, I hope this doesn't come as too much of a shock. There you go. Right. What's next in the schedule? Oh, yes. Okay, can I do a poll from here? Yes, I can. Sweet, let's do that now. So, as I say, the deep dive into Gregor is coming up in about a week from today. Haha, nice. And yeah, so realized is the beginning of the book. That's a different kind of translation too, right? Okay, cool. Thank you for that question. Let's just make this poll. I'm going to try and do them mostly in canto order. No, I don't want it to be yes or no. However, I'm going to need a little bit of extra time for, say, like Honglu and Yisang, because that's definitely a literature and languages I'm much, much less familiar with. So I'm gonna get in some help for those ones. But otherwise, I'm going to try and mostly stick to the canto order. Cool. All right. And hopefully, is this going to let me... Mean. Right, there's a poll there. All right. Okay. Cool. So I'll just leave that until the end of the stream and see how we do with that. Okay, let's put on the chill music, and... Cool, I can see one question there, that's excellent. Let's put on the chill music, and I'm going to read a little bit more, and we'll look at a little bit more German. And then I dropped a bit of money on some paid lunacy, so let's just do some pulls, and maybe I can get some, like, decent... some decent identities, because it'd be fun, and kind of fun to just do that, to splurge a little bit. Sweet. Right. Here we go. Next bit of reading. So, and you might notice something coming up in this section that also is particularly relevant to the game, and this is something that I'm actually really going to look at with the video, by the way. Man, yeah, spooky, eh? Ghost in the Machine, Andrew. Literally. The, well, no, that's Deus Ex Machina. That's a whole other thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a real interesting one, too. Like, I studied a little bit of Russian at university, but it was mainly just trying to learn how to even pronounce it correctly. So, yeah, Dostoevsky's going to be a real challenge, but I'm looking forward to it. Cool, let's make a new track for this next section, I think. I'll have to I might give this its own project too, because otherwise it's going to get confused with the rest of them. Cool, and don't want to monitor. There we go, because otherwise you guys are going to hear everything in stereo, and that's going to be really annoying. Okay. But yeah, check out this particular passage for some Apple origin story stuff. Right, part 2 of the reading. Yet his father was not in the mood to perceive such nice distinctions. "Ah!" he cried as soon as he appeared, in a tone that sounded at once angry and exultant. Gregor drew his head back from the door and lifted it to look at his father. Truly, this was not the father he had imagined to himself. Admittedly, he had been too absorbed of late in his new recreation of crawling over the ceiling to take the same interest as before in what was happening elsewhere in the flat, and he ought really to be prepared for some changes. And yet, could that be his father? The man who used to lie wearily sunk in bed whenever Gregor set out on a business journey, who welcomed him back of an evening, lying in a long chair in a dressing gown, who could not really rise to his feet, but only lifted his arms in greeting, and on the rare occasion when he did go out with his family, on 1 or 2 Sundays a year, and on highest holidays, walked between Gregor and his mother, who were slow walkers anyhow, even more slowly than they did, muffled in his old greatcoat, shuffling laboriously forward with the help of his crook-handled stick, which he set down most cautiously at every step, and, whenever he wanted to say anything, nearly always came to a full stop and gathered his escort around him. Now he was standing there. There we go, that's better. Now I can keep an eye on the chat as well as doing this. Okay. Now he was standing there in fine shape, dressed in a smart blue uniform with gold buttons, such as bank messengers wear. His strong double chin bulged over the stiff high collar of his jacket. From under his bushy eyebrows, his black eyes darted fresh and penetrating glances. His one-time tangled white hair had been combed flat on either side of a shining and carefully exact parting. He pitched his cap, which bore a gold monogram, probably the badge of some bank, in a wide sweep across the whole room onto a sofa, and with the tail ends of his jacket thrown back, his hands in his trouser pockets, advanced with a grim visage towards Gregor. Likely enough, he did not himself know what he meant to do. At any rate, he lifted his feet uncommonly high, and Gregor was dumbfounded at the enormous size of his shoe soles. But Gregor could not risk standing up to him, aware as he had been from the very first day of his new life that his father believed only the severest measures suitable for dealing with him. And so he ran before his father, stopping when he stopped, and scurrying forward again when his father made any kind of move. In this way, they circled the room several times without anything decisive happening. Indeed, the whole operation did not even look like a pursuit, because it was carried out so slowly. And so Gregor did not leave the floor, for he feared that his father might take a piece of peculiar wickedness as a piece of peculiar wickedness any excursion of his over the walls or the ceiling. All the same, he could not stay this course much longer, for while his father took one step, he had to carry out a whole series of movements. He was already beginning to feel breathless. Just as in his former life, his lungs had not been very dependable. As he was staggering along, trying to concentrate his energy on running, hardly keeping his eyes open, in his dazed state, never even thinking of any other escape than simply going forward, and having almost forgotten that the walls were free to him, which in his room were well provided with finely carved pieces of furniture full of knobs and crevices. Suddenly, something lightly flung landed close behind him and rolled before him. It was an apple. A second apple followed immediately. Gregor came to a stop in alarm. There was no point in running on, for his father was determined to bombard him. He had filled his pockets with fruit from the dish on the sideboard and was now shying apple after apple without taking particularly good aim for the moment. The small red apples rolled about the floor as if magnetized and cannoned into each other. An apple thrown without much force grazed Gregor's back and glanced off harmlessly. But another following immediately, landed right on his back and sank in. Gregor wanted to drag himself forward, as if the startling, incredible pain could be left behind him. But he felt as if nailed to the spot, and flattened himself out in complete derangement of all his senses. With his last conscious look, he saw the door of his room being torn open and his mother rushing out ahead of his screaming sister in her underbodice, for her daughter had loosened her clothing to let her breathe more freely and recover from her swoon. He saw his mother rushing toward his father, leaving one after another behind her on the floor her loosened petticoats, stumbling over her petticoats straight to his father and embracing him in complete union with him. But here, Gregor's sight began to fail, with her hands clasped around his father's neck, as she begged for his son's life, as she begged for her son's life. Now, interestingly enough, the German word kriechen, which also translates as to creep, has the additional meaning of to cower. So, Gregor previously, in the German, had been described as creeping around the bedroom. But additionally, you can reuse the word, and again, that's something else that apparently is characteristic of Kafka's writing, particularly in German. You can sort of reuse certain words that have multiple meanings, and so this is another issue that often affects translators. So the sentence that deal with this is: So hätte sich den Vater wirklich nicht vorgestellt, wie jetzt da stand. Allerdings hätte in der letzten Zeit über dem neuartigen Herumkriechen versäumt, sich so wie früher die Vorgänge in der übrigen Wohnung zu kümmern und hätte eigentlich darauf gefasst sein müssen, verwendet, Verhältnis anzutreffen. Yeah. So that's one I need to work on. I kind of looked at the first sentence and I was like, oh yeah, I've got this. Need to practice my German a little more. Cool, so we can stop that there and take a wee look at this one. Right, part 2 of the Cool, and then of course you're always, again, it's really nice and easy when you can literally just see in the waveforms here. But yeah, why an apple of all things? I mean, there's the literal reason in that. So initially, one of the other things, in addition to Gregor losing his voice in the book, he finds that he can't enjoy his usual food. So his sister is the first one that cares for him, although this takes on a slightly more sinister dimension as the book, and it's a very short book. It's 100 pages in English, even shorter in the German translation, I believe, in the German original. So his sister initially is the one that supposedly cares for him. And in the game, of course, in Limbus Company, Gregor references having a sister. And another interesting bit of trivia about this, Kafka's father was named Hermann, Hermann. And again, those of you who know the game, which I'm sure is most of you, will see the parallel there. And kind of curiously, I did have a slideshow about this, but there are sort of the apple, of course, in this case, there's also some biblical and ironically biblical choice of weapon, I suppose. But yeah, so Gregor is unable to eat basically the food that he used to enjoy. His sister brings him a little bowl of milk and bread and stuff, and he can't enjoy that. But eventually he sort of starts eating like rotten or expired food, and so there is a lot of this kind of stuff. The house starts to become dirty. So I think that's part of it. It was literally just a hand, but there also could be something, you know. I will look. I've sort of been looking into some of these kind of resonances and references too, especially again the biblical stuff is pretty strong. Ah! He cried, and again the sunken bed. Whenever Gregor sat out on a, whenever I wearily sunk in bed. Whenever. Cool. Now we just get rid of that. Whenever. Wearily sunk in bed. Whenever Gregor set out on a business journey. There. Now he was standing there. Now he. Stop. And gathered his escort around him. Now he was Actually, we'll get rid of that breath. You always want to try and leave a couple of breaths in to keep things sounding reasonably organic. If it's too airless a recording, our brains will pick up on that, but then you also don't want like every second. That's kind of not ideal either. Right, a couple of questions. I see one or two. At the moment, apart from obviously the deep dive into Der Verwandlung, the Metamorphosis, and Gregor, I've got two other videos. One is the final, and it's taken way longer than it should to finish, is the final episode of The Crawling World, which some of you might have listened to. It's like a 10-part, or at least it will be when I get this one finished. It's a 10-part audio drama. Sort of like dark fantasy. You got these people on a pilgrimage and sort of strange zombie-like creatures that kind of spontaneously generate, something I had to go at writing myself, and I got a bunch of really talented voice actors who all kind of contributed. So yeah, that's in 10 episodes, so I'll be releasing the final episode in a week or so, along with the story, the deep dive into Gregor, and then I'll probably also release the whole little mini series as one like long episode, so you don't have to kind of keep jumping in between episodes to find them all. Yeah, no, the apple. Yeah, without spoiling too much, basically he sustains injuries over the course of the book, and some of them heal, but the longer time goes on, they don't, and it's a little bit unpleasant. It's not full on like Cronenberg-esque stuff, but it does make you feel slightly like, makes your skin crawl a little bit. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. However to pronounce this particular username, JT. Yeah, and actually I'll piggyback on the back of what you mentioned, Andrew MP4. I have, because someone asked had I played Lobotomy Corporation, I think. I made like a little start of it. It's really fascinating to go to that, even though that was the game I was aware of first, because you can also see, like, and I could be way off here, but obviously because it was made earlier, you can see like the team at Project Moon like sort of figuring stuff out, and also because it's a completely different genre of game, it approaches the lore in a different way, because it tells a story in a different way. You can it's really, really interesting. There's maybe a little more ambient storytelling. I also found the tone a little more overtly, again, it might be just because they were working with like a slightly more basic art style and things. It's got a slightly more humorous tone, at least on the face of it, although I do know, again, from having looked at snippets like that it does shit gets real as the game goes on, for sure. Ulysses, I found it really sad too, and in a lot of the reading I've done about people's reactions to the book, that's not something I've often come across, because you really feel for the guy, as even though he's also quite annoying too, because he's so frustratingly passive. But he sacrificed so much and continues to do so. And of course, then there's this other big theory, again, without giving away too much of what I'm going to talk about in the actual video itself, but that the story, the Metamorphosis, is in some ways less about Gregor and more actually about his sister Greta. But that's a whole different kettle of fish. Cool. All right, I think there are a couple more questions, but I'll get to them later. Now let me see if I can avoid screwing things up completely and open up the game, because I used to play Magic the Gathering when I was a kid, and nothing gave me more pleasure than cracking packs, as they say. And obviously that's a big part of why gacha games, people enjoy gacha games. I'm a little bit older now, so I try and be a little bit moderate, but this is going to be fun. Okay, let's see. Move on. Oh yeah, there we go. And once again, I'm going to have to just remove. Actually, we'll turn that off and we'll switch back to the music. Okay, sweet. Remove this and add source. I don't know. You know, so you can see my delighted smile as something awesome happens, or my immeasurable disappointment when I'm getting exciting new identities. Alright, doing it. Nope. This one will go. Yeah, it was very, very poignant. Game audio is kind of loud. Okay, sweet. I'm going to turn down the desktop video in general. How's that? Awesome, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, it doesn't really matter anyway. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Okay, I am definitely gonna... Oh, you can't hear much at all? Ah, nothing? Ah, what the heck? I haven't made any changes. That's really bizarre. Sorry. I'm not quite sure, because maybe it was because I put the desktop audio back down. Still, I haven't changed anything on my end. Ah, okay. All right. Thanks for being patient, everyone. It's strange. I literally just changed the scene, and all my mic auxiliary settings were the same. But I'll have that fixed for next time. It's okay. We can do. Bear with me. It might just go away again for a second. Okay. And then is the voice gone, or is it here again? Okay. That's right. It's an easy fix. I'll leave the scene as is, and I'll figure this out for next time. But the other thing I did want to do is also take away. I go. Cool. Oh no, we want window, don't we? But we want a different window. Right. Yes, I did. I got the I've got a couple. I have to go back and check. The one that I've been finding, and again, this is probably still total noob stuff. I've got to check what the name is again. It's one for Hong Lu though, and he just seems to just cut through everything like butter. Hang on, I'll have to get back to you. Let me start the game up again. This might be a complete disaster, but that's all right. I'll stay on scene 2 on OBS, and while I'm doing that, while I'm staying that up, so I can tell you maybe partly who I'm working with. What else was it that I wanted to do here? Oh, there was going to be one more reading, if that's not too dull. And also... Oh yeah, another interesting thing I learned, and this is completely just trivial stuff now, but the word Panzer, which of course we always like associate with tanks in German, literally means carapace or armor. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing Heathcliff's Canto 2, and I really like that's cool. No, there's so much stuff that I'm really looking forward to seeing, but so far, once this loads, excellent. Oh, that's really good to see, because I feel like in the early parts of the game, again, it's like it's within his character, but he doesn't get many like opportunities to shine. And of course, you're also, especially with the early stuff with like Hammer und Nägel and stuff, you also are kind of, Sinclair is a little bit like, leaves you kind of going, ugh, geez, what a wiener. Speaking of which, how's the poll looking? Okay, so Rodion, yeah, as I possibly suspected, Sinclair's... It's close though between Sinclair and Ishmael, coming a close second together. Well, not coming second equal, but yeah, Rodion is definitely looking to be the most popular. That makes sense to me. So I found the Lord of Hongyuan has been really effective in terms of identities, and the Don Quixote W Corp L3 cleanup agent has been really cool. And I've also got, and the same with Yisang as well. But yeah, the Lord has been pretty cool, and also I really like the animations too. That was really early on. Cool, yeah, and I'm wanting to do more sort of combos and stuff. Yeah, I felt so lucky. That was like one of my first because I had no idea what I was doing like the first time I played, and I was like, oh, well, I've got this lunacy, and I was like, bling, bling, blong. Yeah, and it was kind of unreal how easily, unreal how easily he seemed to like carry a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's good to know. Interesting. Yeah, but I'm sort of trying to get a bit more into the actual like technical gameplay side of things, because yeah, the storytelling is wonderful, but okay, that's good to know. It's good to know that I'm not alone in this, eh? All right, well, I think we've kind of accomplished a few things here. We've had a little bit of a look at the recording process. Lots of mistakes, but stuff I'll remedy maybe for the next live stream. Also just got a lot, as I always do, from like people commenting, people in the chat. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to round things out with the last little bit of a read. And then there's also like a little bonus story if you want to stick around that's not actually related to the Metamorphosis, but it is a really haunting, and in my opinion, it's a little scarier than the Metamorphosis itself. So it ties in with the whole Tom's Terror Trove thing. I'm going to record it. It'll probably not get released, and I might even actually cut it out of rebroadcast. So it's a kind of like stick around, because you might not get the opportunity otherwise. It's called Before the Law. So without further ado, I'll do a little bit of last bit of reading, and then we'll kind of wrap it up, and I will say thank you so much for hanging out for a little bit, helping me figure out everything, and I might do some more of these, and they'll be even better and full of more stuff going on, and I will just continue to witter on like that. So, third reading from the Metamorphosis. Here we go. All right. Now, this is a particularly strange part of... Oh, hang on. You're going to be hearing me in stereo, which is not ideal. There we go. This is a particularly odd part of the book, and one that I'm still trying to figure out the interpretation of, and especially see where it might link in with Project Moon and Limbus Company. These three mysterious lodges move into the Samsa household. So, Gregor's sister began to play. The father and mother, from either side, intently watched the movements of her hands. Gregor, attracted by the playing, ventured to move forward a little until his head was actually inside the living room. He felt hardly any surprise at his growing lack of consideration for the others. There had been a time when he prided himself on being considerate, and yet, just on this occasion, he had more reason than ever to hide himself, since, owing to the amount of dust that lay thick in his room and rose into the air at the slightest movement, he too was covered with dust. Fluff and hair and remnants of food trailed with him, caught on his back and along his sides. His indifference to everything was much too great for him to turn on his back and scrape himself clean on the carpet, as once he had done several times a day. And in spite of his condition, no shame deterred him from advancing a little over the spotless floor of the living room. To be sure, no one was aware of him. The family was entirely absorbed in the violin playing. The lodgers, however, who first of all had stationed themselves, hands in pockets, much too close behind the music stand so that they could all have read the music, which must have bothered his sister, had soon retreated to the window, half whispering with down-bent heads, and stayed there while his father turned an anxious eye on them. Indeed, they were making it more than obvious that they had been disappointed in their expectation of hearing good or enjoyable violin playing, that they had more than enough of the performance, and only out of courtesy suffered a continued disturbance of their peace. From the way they all kept blowing the smoke of their cigars high in the air through nose and mouth, one could divine their irritation. And yet Gregor's sister was playing so beautifully. Her face leaned sideways, intently, and sadly her eyes followed the notes of the music. Gregor crawled a little farther forward and lowered his head to the ground so that it might be possible for his eyes to meet hers. Was he an animal, that music had such an effect upon him? He felt as if the way were opening before him to the unknown nourishment he craved. He was determined to push forward till he reached his sister, to pull at her skirt and so let her know that she was to come into his room with her violin, for no one here appreciated her playing as he would appreciate it. He would never let her out of his room, at least, not so long as he lived. His frightful appearance would become, for the first time, useful to him. He would watch all the doors of his room at once and spit at intruders, but his sister should need no constraint. She should stay with him of her own free will. She should sit beside him on the sofa, bend down her ear to him and hear him confide that he had the firm intention of sending her to the conservatorium, and that, but for his mishap last Christmas, surely Christmas was long past, he would have announced it to everyone without allowing a single objection. After this confession, his sister would be so touched that she would burst into tears, and Gregor would then raise himself to her shoulder and kiss her on the cheek, which, now that she went to business, she kept free of any ribbon or collar. "Mr. Samsa," replied the middle lodger to Gregor's father, and pointed, without wasting any more words, at Gregor, now working himself slowly forward. The violin fell silent. The middle lodger first smiled to his friends with a shake of the head, and then looked at Gregor again. Instead of driving Gregor out, his father seemed to think it more needful to begin by soothing down the lodgers, although they were not at all agitated, and apparently found Gregor more entertaining than the violin playing. All right. Well, folks, I will say thank you so much for hanging around and having a bit of a look-see and having a bit of a listen. I will round things out, as I said, by reading a very, very short story called Before the Law by Franz Kafka. Awesome. Thank you very much, Chalkybus2125. And yeah, I'll get back to work for the deep dive into Gregor and the Metamorphosis, and more videos to come after that. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, now let me just find it in the tabs here. Before the Law. Here we go. Right. Alrighty, have a wonderful Friday evening, or I suspect it is for most of you, sometime on Friday. Yep. Okay. Cheers, Ulysses. Before the law sits a gatekeeper. To this gatekeeper comes a man from the country who asks to gain entry into the law. But the gatekeeper says that he cannot grant him entry at the moment. The man thinks about it and then asks if he will be allowed to come in later on. "It is possible," says the gatekeeper, "but not now." At the moment the gate to the law stands open, as always, and the gatekeeper walks to the side. So the man bends over in order to see through the gate into the inside. When the gatekeeper notices that, he laughs and says, "If it tempts you so much, try it in spite of my prohibition. But take note, I am powerful, and I am only the most lowly gatekeeper. But from room to room stand gatekeepers, each more powerful than the other. I can't endure even one glimpse of the third. The man from the country has not expected such difficulties. The law should always be accessible for everyone, he thinks. But as he now looks more closely at the gatekeeper in his fur coat, at his large pointed nose and his long, thin black Tartar's beard, he decides that it would be better to wait until he gets permission to go inside. The gatekeeper gives him a stool and allows him to sit down at the side in front of the gate. There he sits, for days and years. He makes many attempts to be let in, and he wears the gatekeeper out with his requests. The gatekeeper often interrogates him briefly, questioning him about his homeland and many other things, but they are indifferent questions, the kind great men put. And at the end, he always tells him once more that he cannot let him inside yet. The man, who has equipped himself with many things for his journey, spends everything, no matter how valuable, to win over, to bribe the gatekeeper. The latter takes it all, but, as he does so, says, "I am taking this only so that you do not think you have failed to do anything." During the many years, the man observes the gatekeeper almost continuously. He forgets the other gatekeepers, and this one seems to him the only obstacle for entry into the law. He curses the unlucky circumstances, in the first years thoughtlessly and out loud. Later, as he grows old, he still mumbles to himself. He becomes childish and, since in the long years studying the gatekeeper he had come to know the fleas in his fur collar, he even asks the fleas to help him persuade the gatekeeper. Finally, his eyesight grows weak, and he does not know whether things are really darker around him or whether his eyes are merely deceiving him. But he recognizes now in the darkness an illumination which breaks inextinguishably out of the gateway to the law. Now he no longer has much time to live. Before his death, he gathers in his head all his experiences of the entire time up into one question which he has not yet put to the gatekeeper. He waves to him, since he can no longer lift up his stiffening body. The gatekeeper has to bend way down to him, for the great difference has changed things to the disadvantage of the man. "What do you still want to know, then?" asks the gatekeeper. "You are insatiable." "Everyone strives after the law," says the man. "So how is it that in these many years no one except me has requested entry?" The gatekeeper sees that the man is already dying, and, in order to reach his diminished sense of hearing, he shouts at him. "Here, no one else can gain entry, since this gate was made especially for you. I am now going to close it." And that is the end of Before the Law by Franz Kafka. Take care. It's a scary world out there.